Ridgefield, Connecticut. Inland Wetlands Board. Public hearing. IW 24-21. 599 Branchville Road. August 22, 2024. A public service of the Ridgefield Record.
This is the regularly scheduled Town of Ridgefield Inland Wetlands Board meeting for Thursday, August 22nd, 2024. In attendance, we have Carson Fincham, Alan Pilch, Tim Bishop, Chris Phelps, myself, Susan Baker, and staff members Artie Paranjape, Caleb Johnson. Before we get started, I would like to just note that we have two public hearings commencing this evening and a limited amount of time. So what we'll have to do is do as much as we can on each of these. So if it would come to some reasonable break where we can continue the meeting, if it needs to be continued, we'll do that. Unfortunately, we just have too full a schedule to try to get one done and then start the other. So I hope that's going to be okay for everyone. First on the agenda, we have IW 24-21, 599 Branchville Road, plenary ruling application for a stream crossing and related site work for an accessway driveway with some related drainage work within the upland review area of wetlands and watercourses. Owner Morton Bin, applicant Robert Jewell. And Caleb will read in the documents received to date.
Yes. Okay, so we have the site plan, proof of notice by applicant to water company, wetlands and watercourse delineation, soil report by a soil scientist, drainage report, description of the ecological communities and functions of the wetlands or watercourses and the effects of the proposed regulated activities on these communities and wetland functions, description of how the applicant will change, diminish, or enhance the ecological communities and functions of the wetlands or watercourses involved in the application and each of the alternatives, and a description of why each alternative considered was deemed neither feasible nor prudent. Measures which mitigate the impact of the proposed activity, a biological evaluation of any marsh, swamp, or bog or other wetland within the affected property, biological narrative of existing conditions and impacts, a full and detailed description of the proposed construction or the erection of structures on the affected property, including blueprints, engineering, and architectural plans or designs where available and reasonable obtainable. Proof that notices of public hearing were mailed to all property owners within 100 feet of the subject property, no less than 10 days prior to the hearing. Written narrative proposed activity, location map, plenary existing condition site plan, plenary complete set of proposed site plans, authorization letter, existing conditions survey dated June 21st, 2024, invasive species management report dated June 21st, 2024, OM report dated June 21st, 2024, 599 Branchville Zone 3 letter, JFM Engineering PRD, public correspondence dated July 24, 2024, public correspondence dated July 29, 2024, public correspondence dated July 30th, 2024, public hearing instructions 599 Branchville Road, abutters email from town staff, public correspondence dated July 10th, 2024, legal notice dated August 8th, 2024, neighbor notification package dated August 12th, 2024, public correspondence dated August 12th, 2024, legal notice dated August 15th, 2024, return receipts 599 Branchville Road dated August 20th, 2024, public correspondence dated August 19th and 20th, 2024, and alternative use outline and exhibits dated August 22nd, 2024.
Thank you very much. I see we have Mr. Jewell on the panel now. If you'd like to get started.
Good evening, Madam Chair, staff, members of the board. For the record, my name is Robert Jewell. I'm an attorney licensed to practice in the state of Connecticut, and my office is at 150 Danbury Road, Ridgefield, Connecticut. I'm representing the property owners, Marisol and Morton Bin. Also here tonight, and if you could elevate these folks, I would appreciate it. Peter Romano of Land Tech, Brian Carey of Land Tech, the project engineer, and the project architect, Seelan Pather of Beinfeld Architects. So the subject property is approximately 19.9206 acres in size. It's located in the R2A residence zone with a minimum lot size requirement of 2 acres. Premises is improved by a single-family dwelling and is classified as a farm and operated as the bin animal rescue facility until recently. That facility is relocated out of state, but the buildings and improvements remain, including the farm roads that serve the various animal enclosures. Branchville Road, also known as Route 102, as you also know, is a state highway. Some housekeeping notes first, since there appears to be a significant amount of misinformation and unanswered questions circulating about this application. First, this property is at 599 Branchville Road, and not a single tree has been cut down on this property. There's a neighboring property down the street at 653 Branchville Road that received an approval from both the Inland Wetlands Board and the Planning and Zoning Commission with an application pending before the Connecticut DEEP. DEEP stands for Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, formerly known as the Department of Environmental Protection. That approval was for pond dredging and the removal of invasives and a number of trees and related site work. The stream that runs through this property runs into the pond on that neighboring property. That pond is known as Candy's Pond. That pond, like many others, is filled with silt for over 100 years and was also choked with invasive weeds. The shoreline was choked with invasive plants and dead or dying, mainly ornamental non-native trees and plants that had been neglected for decades. Those property owners obtained approval to remain those invasive trees and restore the pond to a healthy pond and replant that shoreline in accordance with a planting plan that was approved by this board. After the dredging, which is not even commenced yet, the pond will be restored in cooperation with the Connecticut DEEP Fisheries Department and restocked with native species, and the shoreline will be replanted in accordance with the approved and bonded planting plan. By the way, when the owner emptied that pond by opening the dam, and opening the dam does not require any kind of approval from any agency whatsoever, there were less than 20 sunfish found in that pond, evidence of how unhealthy and how sick that pond was. It was only 4 to 6 feet deep and choked by invasive weeds. When this is done, the pond should be about 20 feet deep and will be a habitat for not only the fish, but the animals that consume fish. It has nothing to do with this application. The next point of clarification: the Bin Animal Sanctuary is not now and has never been a nature preserve or part of anything called the Branchville Reserve, or preserve, pardon me. It was an animal farm and a preserve for farm animals like sheep, goats, donkeys, alpaca, llamas, giant rabbits, and the like. It was a great facility that relocated to a larger and more level facility in Virginia that made it much easier to operate. All of the pens and roadways and buildings and the water and the electrical conduits that run on the property and shown on the survey are still in place. All of those buildings and pens will be removed as part of this project, but the trails will remain in place. As great as it was not a wildlife sanctuary. In fact, it's surrounded by fencing to make sure that no native animals could get into the property. And this was done to protect the animals that were in the care of the bins from parasites and diseases that were carried by the native wildlife. The native wildlife may be immune to those diseases, but farm animals were not. So this was not an animal preserve in the sense of native wildlife. It's also not part of the Branchville Preserve, which was evidently a plan to obtain land from the state of Connecticut that had been taken by the state of Connecticut for the Super 7 project that was abandoned by the state after decades of planning. This property was never taken by the state and has always been private property. It is not open space. It's not intended to be any open space. The owner has never heard of the Branchville Preserve. So back to the application itself. The application was filed, as you know, as a summary ruling application for a stream crossing, a driveway, accessway, and related site work to serve a rear lot at 599 Branchville Road. As you'll recall, we presented this application to the board on July 11th, 2024. And it's important to note that at the time we submitted the summary ruling application, we actually submitted the more significant materials that were required for a plenary ruling application. We did that out of courtesy. And keep in mind that the materials that were just gone through by the wetlands agent were all submitted at the initial time of the application, but for the notice materials. And I did update a use outline for alternative uses today, and I submitted that for the record, and we'll go over that in a few moments. At the meeting on July 11th, after we presented, this board voted to raise the application to a plenary ruling application based on two factors under section 9.1 of the Inland Wetlands Regulations. And those two factors were as follows. First, under section 9.11, that the applicant proposed an activity that may have a significant activity on wetlands and watercourses. And second, under section 9.13, that a public hearing would be in the public interest. We renew our objection to those factors and those findings, and we preserve those issues for appeal. As to the first factor, it was board member Pilch who I think stated in support of the significant activity that we are disturbing 1.2 acres of uplands. We object to this finding under section 9.11 because it does not include that section any impact on upland review areas, but only impacts on wetlands and watercourses upon which we have no activities proposed. And as you'll see from the presentation, no impacts will occur as to those resources. That section is specifically limited to reviewing activities in an upland review area to determine whether those activities have an impact on a wetland and watercourse, period, not on an upland. For the record, in addition, it wasn't until 2020 that the upland review area was increased to 100 feet from the previous limits of 50 feet for driveways and multifamily buildings. And before that, it was 25 feet. Our activities are outside all wetlands and watercourses except for the bridge, which goes over but not in a watercourse. There is no activity, as I said, proposed in a wetland or watercourse. In fact, the applicant chose to install a bridge so as to avoid any impact on the watercourse or wetlands. Most applicants would choose the cheaper option, which is to stick a culvert or a pipe in the stream and build a road or driveway over it. And the stream is certainly small enough to be piped. As to the second reason, the application being elevated because there's public interest, it's hard to argue that there isn't public interest, but with inland wetlands applications, that's dangerous because, as we'll likely see when we get to public comment, almost none of the comments will have anything to do with the factors that are before the Inland Wetlands Board and its limited jurisdiction under the general statutes. With that out of the way, I'm next going to jump to the concept of prudent and feasible alternatives, because that's an important part of how we got to the application that's before you now. As you know, under both the general statutes and our wetlands regulations, prudent is defined as an economically or otherwise reasonable in light of the social benefit to be derived from the regulated activity. It goes on to say that costs may be considered. Feasible is defined as being able to be constructed or implemented consistent with sound engineering principles. With regard to prudent and feasible alternatives, if you find that there's a prudent feasible alternative, it must also have less of an impact on the wetlands than the proposed activity. So in order to determine whether there's a prudent or feasible alternative, it also first has to be a regulated activity. So what is the regulated activity here? The regulated activity is the construction of a wetland crossing and vehicular area to serve a residential development and related site work. Much of that related site work within an upland is plantings in order to, when we remove the existing improvements that are within an upland, we're restoring those disturbed areas with plantings. And whatever happens here on this property, because the 14 acres that are high and dry to the rear of this property on the backside of this stream would have to be crossed, because there is only one means of ingress and egress legally to this property, and that is from Branchville Road. So whatever happens here, whatever you use this property for, a crossing would be required. And as I've already said, we're proposing to build a bridge with the abutments outside of a wetland and watercourse, which in and of itself is a prudent and feasible alternative to sticking a culvert or a pipe in that wetlands and watercourse to cross that wetlands. So how did we get to where we are now in this proposed use? Well, I met Morton about 10 years ago, long after the sanctuary had been approved, built, and was operating. He asked me at the time what he could do for the property in the event that he wanted to sell it for development or develop it himself. So that being my job, I explained to him what all of the options were. So I did submit for the record, and you can see that. I'd like to share my screen right now. And hopefully you'll be able to see this. So this is the existing conditions site plan. Can you see that site plan right now?
Would help to enlarge it a little if you could.
Gosh, let's see. Is that larger on your screen?
No, it's
Oh,
actually
God.
smaller now.
Of course it is. Let's see if I can make this any bigger. Is that getting any bigger?
Yeah, go another one if you can.
All right. Now let me see
There
if
you
I
go.
can center this thing.
Yeah. Okay, that's good.
All right. So
Better.
is this centered so that you can see it?
Yes.
Okay, good. So hopefully you can see my little cursor. Just for orientation purposes, you could see the north compass rose up here, pointing north being that way. So Branchville Road is ostensibly or essentially to the south side of this property. As you can see, as you can't see, but as you can see that there's a proposed first division that shows parcel A and parcel B. A first division is the right that every property owner has to divide their property and create one building lot if that property had not been divided or subdivided since the town enacted subdivision regulations. In Ridgefield, our first set of subdivision regulations were enacted on March 1, 1959. This property is eligible for a first division. So the plan here is to create a first division with parcel A being along Branchville Road and the Branchville Road frontage, and the house that's there and the man-made pond on that property being on 5.9156 acres, with parcel B to the rear being 14.005 acres. Access here, as you can see, currently is over this existing driveway from Branchville Road, and then it heads down here to the east. And then there's a very sharp dog leg where we have a wetlands crossing here to get to the back side of the property. The reason that this crossing is not usable for residential development purposes is because this is too tight of a turn for emergency vehicles to access. And in talking to the public safety departments here in town, they typically like to see if you have development on a property, they want fire trucks and ambulances to be able to safely get there. So that's why we're proposing a new crossing. But as you can see from this, this map, all of the existing improvements are shown here. So you're showing the sheds, you're showing more sheds, you're showing animal enclosures, you're showing more sheds and animal enclosures, more sheds and animal enclosures. All of these will be removed and restored in accordance with the plans, with the development, as you'll see, basically taking place in the most disturbed area of this property, so that the balance of the property back here, other than the trails, which will remain to be kept essentially in its natural state and the wooded area. So what can the applicant do with this property? It being a little over 19 acres in size, and being divided now into a 14-acre parcel and a 5.9-acre parcel. So with a 19.921 acre parcel, a conventional subdivision requires 10% open space, which would require the open space parcel to be 1.9921 acres in size, a shade under 2 acres. The balance available for development would be 17.9289 acres, which means you could have 8 lots on this property under a conventional subdivision. A planned residential development, as you know, oh, and I think I have a 7-lot proposed subdivision here just for your own edification, so that you could see what a proposed layout would look like, with the pond being in the open space. Lot 1 is the existing house. Lot 2 is a new house. basically where the proposed buildings are here. Same with lot 3, another single family dwelling. Lots 4, 5, 6, and 7. As you could see, this would be served by a proposed road with a cul-de-sac, driveways, an access way here to serve these 2 lots, and the balance of the lots would be served by separate driveways. So only the zoning regulations would dictate how large these homes could be. And let's assume they're anywhere between 4,500 and 6,000 square feet in size. In addition, if you do a conventional subdivision, you're selling the individual lots to individual property owners who can essentially do whatever they want with the property in accordance with the zoning regulations, including accessory dwelling units, swimming pools, barns for horses, clear cutting a lot to put in a riding ring, you name it. You would have 7 lots under control of 7 different people who can do with it what they like. We think that this proposal would lead to more destruction of this property and more use of this property than what we're proposing. The next option would be a planned residential development. And what I have here is a 9-lot PRD. Now, this was engineered in 2014. It's 9 lots because the applicant was intending at the time to try to obtain some additional land. So under the PRD option, he could not get 9 lots, but he could get 8 lots. But this is the only PRD plan that I have. So we'll assume that this is an 8-lot plan. We'll combine lots 6, 8, and 9 into 2 lots. And that's a PRD subdivision that could be developed on this property. What is a PRD subdivision? PRD stands for Planned Residential Development. It was enacted in the late 70s, I believe, for people to develop lands that might be considered more marginal, so that rather than creating, in this case, in a 2-acre zone, 2-acre lots, you can create lots as small as 1 acre, provided 2 things occur. One, that that you can't create more lots under a PRD than you could under a conventional subdivision, which in this case, we could do an 8-lot conventional subdivision. So you could do an 8-lot PRD. And provided that 1/3 of the land, instead of just 10%, go to open space. But just like the conventional subdivision, let me go through access first. Access would be over the existing driveway and with that existing dogleg and existing crossing, except it would be widened to meet town road standards. For your edification, under section 4.4-14 of the Ridgefield subdivision regulations, the minimum right-of-way for a road is 50 feet, with a minimum pavement width of 22 feet. The maximum grade is 12%, and a cul-de-sac, which is what this is, the cul-de-sac minimum diameter is 100 feet, and the minimum diameter of pavement is 80 feet. So this proposal, like a traditional subdivision, might have a little more open space, pocket of open space here, pocket of open space here, and a larger pocket of open space here, including the pond. But you would then have, again, these lots under private ownership, and only the zoning regulations would dictate what these private owners could do with their property. Obviously, and engineering capabilities as well, but engineers are pretty creative these days. So again, we think that this is much more destructive of the site and less conducive to the use that we're looking at than the multifamily that we are proposing. This crossing, again, would go in the same location as the existing crossing, but it would be widened significantly over what's there now. The next alternative is another multifamily, similar to the multifamily that we're doing, or proposing rather, but rather than having 2 buildings with all of the units within those 2 buildings and the balance to open space, you would have a number of duplexes and a couple of 3plexes thrown in, again, using approximately the same access point, but again, significantly widening this crossing down here. As you can see, the widening of the crossing would more impact the existing man-made pond right here as well. We also think that this development is less favorable to the property and the preservation of the property than what we're proposing, which again, you'll see when the consultants start going through the specifics of the proposal. So with regard to single-family residential and multifamily, we feel that what we're proposing will have much less impact on the land, allows more of the land to be preserved in its natural state, and is much better not only for the neighbors in the town, but also for the land. Again, the options for multifamily, Connecticut General Statutes 830G, which is an affordable housing statute, as you all know, that requires 30% of the units be set aside as affordable for a period of 40 years. We anticipate that there will be a number of other options, including TOD and Live, Work, Ride, which is a state variation of TOD, that no matter how you skin this cat, we would certainly have the ability to build the number of units that we are proposing on this site. We haven't quite determined the specifics of what we're coming in under, but one thing we do know, we are proposing to build luxury units for sale, not rental, of which a small percentage of will be set aside for affordable as required by the general statutes or local regulations, as the case may be. This is not an affordable housing complex. It is not a rental complex. These, as you will see when you get to the architecturals and the site plans, will be a luxury housing development. And the amenities are not a tennis court or a pickleball court or a swimming pool. The amenities themselves are the woods that are being preserved. And the walking trails, that's why the walking trails are remaining. So why is multifamily better? Well, if you get open space in the single family development, you're going to end up with about 1.4 acres of open space or 6 acres of open space. Because keep in mind, the land being subdivided is not going to be the 20 acres, the 19 acres. The first division occurs first. So we slice off these 5 acres and it's under separate ownership. There's then an easement over the access way and the proposed road to get to the rear property. The only land being subdivided technically is the 14.05 acres. So the open space requirement is calculated off 14 acres, not 19 acres. So you could end up with a conventional subdivision with open space as little as 1.4 acres. And even under the PRD, you're at about 6 acres of open space. What we're proposing here, you're going to end up with 7 acres of disturbance and at least 7 acres of undisturbed land in its natural state. So it's much better for retaining the natural state of this property. In addition, where's the building in relation to the wetlands? The closest distance that a building gets to a wetland or watercourse is 108.6 feet, which is outside the upland review area. The closest driveway or vehicular area other than the bridge is 67.4 feet from a wetland, just inside the upland review area and engineered in such a way as to prevent any type of impact on the wetlands. And the only impacts proposed here, by the way, are the temporary impacts of construction. So again, the purpose of this application is for approval of the replacement stream crossing and a driveway, since the existing stream crossing were designed for farm vehicles and not passenger or emergency vehicles. The vast majority of the proposed improvements are outside the upland review area and outside the jurisdiction of the inland wetlands regulation. And I'm incorporating all the materials we submitted. And so now, after that portion of the presentation, I hope I've clarified a lot of the matters for you. I hope you understand now why we're going with this proposal and why we think this is the best proposal. And at this point, I would like to defer to, unless you have questions for me, I would like to defer to Peter so that he can go through the site plan in great detail and you can see more of what we're actually proposing.
Thank you. Are there any questions right now from the board?
No, but I just want to put something on the record, Sue.
Sure, go ahead.
In our definitions, section 2, under regulated activity, in accordance with the procedures set forth in these regulations, the board may rule that any other activity located within non-wetland or non-watercourse areas that is likely to impact or affect wetlands or watercourses is a regulated activity. So that's up to us.
Well, that's
And
fine,
because it's
Mr.
outside upland review is irrelevant in my opinion. I think this is a significant enough activity or proposed, and I would consider it regulated.
Well, you've already made that finding, Mr. Board Member, at the last meeting. I was simply preserving that issue for appeal.
Yep, that's
And
fine.
even though you are able to look at matters outside for impacts on the wetlands only, you do not have jurisdiction over those under the general statutes, regardless of what your regulations say.
Okay,
But
thank you.
that will be an issue more for the judge than anything else.
Yep, that's why I'm putting it on the record. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
I'm sorry, someone else? No, okay, so going on to Mr. Romano.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Pete Romano. I'm a principal at Land Tech. We are a site civil, environmental, and surveying company out of Westport with offices up in Newtown and also down in Darien. Am I have the ability to share my screen?
Yes, you do.
Okay. Hang on. Let me get. Hang on 1 second. I'm sorry. Let's see what's happening. It's not allowing me to share. Interesting. Hang on 1 second. I'm sorry. Sorry.
Is there something we could ask
No,
Caleb
no, it's
to
not,
put up?
it's not letting me call up my drawings.
Hmm.
Let me see if I can have Brian come down and help me, Brian Carey. Hang on, I'm so sorry.
Take
It's
your
been
time.
sitting up here all night, and now when it time comes, I can't get it to share, Brian. Right there under right. Okay, it's no, you see it up there.
Okay.
Okay, cool. All right. I think so. Can you guys all see this? Can you all see the screen?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is a rendering that just to give you a little idea, it's not the finished product, but Sealand, who you'll hear from in a little while, gives you an idea of what the buildings will look like. This is a view with your back to Branchville. Looking across, the bridge would be over to your right here a little bit, and these are the two buildings. The driveway will come up between them, and then I'll show you the whole thing in a minute, but you drive up between the buildings and park underneath and in the back. And this is just a little site. I'm sure you've all driven by it 1,000 times. Orientu, Branchville's out here. The pond is here. Mr. Bin's existing home is here. And then the stream runs through this portion of, this is the 5 acres of the almost 20 acres of property. I think it's 19.97 or something. And then this is really the project area where we're proposing the roadway and the 2 buildings and stuff. And I'm going to skip right to our uncolored site plan, just so you can see what's going on here. Again, I'm not going to, Bob did a very good job. In the interest of time tonight, I know you've got other big things on after us. Bob pretty much described it. I'll take you through a little bit of the technical stuff. So this is, again, just to orient you, Branchville Road, this is our proposed roadway. For a period of time, we all went out there at the site plan, if you remember, it's got beautiful pillars as you come in. We're gonna stay on that path until we sort of get down towards the stream. And we all walked across, or close to the stream, we walked across on an existing footbridge. But this bridge in the center here is about 75 feet. The intention is this, we're able to actually stay out of both the floodplain and the wetlands. It'll be a timber bridge set on concrete abutments on either side of the bridge. It'll be a spanned bridge. Meaning there'll be no center column pier that'll be in the stream at all. And then once you get across, there's about 1,000 lineal feet of 22-foot wide roadway that leads up to the two buildings. And I'm just going to put the little colored drawing that we have. It's a little bit more helpful to you. Again, orient you, come across the bridge, roadway leads up here, and you can pull under the building in the front on both sides. You have, I think, about 44 covered parking spaces, meaning that you park under the building. The building's what's called a podium type building, meaning parking is on grade underneath the building. And then the residential units are above it. There'll be elevators to the ground floor, and there'll be the stairs, all the proper amenities for handicap and also code compliance. But then you also have about 36 parking spaces outside, or what's referred to on surface parking. And if you remember when we were out there, there's a fairly defined area where we're going to be building this. It was actually, I think we were able to describe to everybody out there on the site that this tree line about here is going to be excavated, and we anticipate it's probably going to be ledge on both sides here. There'll still be walking paths through the site, but from this green area forward is kind of the limit of our activity, the construction of the construction of the buildings and parking areas and things like that. As Bob alluded to, the encroachment into the regulated area, a lot of it is removing the existing structures, and you saw them. They're not huge structures. They're timber sheds and split rail fences and things like that out there. So there won't. I think there's probably one substantial shed, towards the. I guess it ended up being the east side when we were walking over to that area. But other than that, for the most part, they were all, little sheds that were there to sort of give protection to the animals that were on site there. We're not going into the wetlands at all. I think the closest we come is the bridge abutments, probably 8 to 10 feet away from it. We're going to implement all kinds of sedimentation and erosion controls. I wouldn't get on the meeting tonight and tell you they were not going to be, there won't be some dirt rolling into the wetlands. So we're going to prohibit that by silt fencing and hay bales. And in many cases where we get close to the wetlands, a lot of time we recommend putting chain link fence up there with a silt fence on there, and construction fencing so that nobody goes into the wetlands areas at all. The site is going to be served by on-site septic system. It's located in the back here. I don't think I've got anything that, no, I don't. It calls it out exactly, but it's these light green areas, because obviously we're going to go in there and grade it and create septic areas here and over here. The easterly part of the property here and here doesn't work. I guess the easterly property and the northerly portion of the property, but the other heavy green areas, they're essentially going to remain undisturbed. We're going to try to maintain the walkways and probably enhance them. The site's going to be served by public water. It's going to come off of Branchville. All the typical utilities will be here. Electric and cable and everything will be underground. And the on-site storm drainage will be infiltrated, which I'm sure you've all seen. We've designed the drainage so that there's no increase in flow off the site from the 1, 10, and 50-year storm. It's in compliance with the town of Ridgefield's storm drainage manual. And we've incorporated some water quality measures as well. Not only are we holding the quantity of water, we're also enhancing the quality of the water. This existing home, the Binns home, will stay intact. There's some suggestion perhaps in the future, put an addition on there, but his septic system is served by a system up on this area. There will be no further disturbance for the house for septic. Just to give you a little background on the septic systems. The septic system, unlike a single family residential, and they give you, it's going to be what's referred to as, there's a couple different kinds of septic systems. Obviously, the septic systems, it's the jurisdiction of the local health department. And then there's septic systems that under the jurisdiction of the state health department. And then the most extensive and probably the most sophisticated septic systems, which a lot of times includes some type of treatment of the sewage, is regulated by DEP. This system is, we're staying inside the limits of the state health department, which is 7,500 gallons per day per property. So all of these new residential units and even Mr. Binns' existing home will all be at the level of 7,500 gallons. The total will be 75 gallons for the entire site. We're anticipating there'll be 58 bedrooms on the property. And again, the sewage flow is determined by bedroom count, not by units. I think there's approximately going to be 29 units, ranging in size from 1 to 2 bedrooms. As Bob had mentioned, these are all going to be for sale units, which typically implies, excuse me, I'm just going to have to take a little sip of something. Hang on. Which typically implies, you know, a little bit higher quality than if you're renting the properties out. And that was always from the very beginning, Mr. Binns' intention. Have something on this piece of property that he can be proud of. He's been very anxious to get the project moving along. He's probably one of the more enthusiastic clients that we have at 86 years old. He's been the impetus behind moving this project forward. So I don't want to repeat a lot of the stuff that Bob said. I think this does take advantage of the fact because I won't get people to think that it's multifamily and the stigma that sometimes goes along with multifamily. And you'll see in a minute when Sealand takes you through some of the drawings. I mean, Bruce Beinfield's office is one of the renowned multifamily architects, probably in the Northeast. And so the home's been tucked into, and we looked at a couple different things. We looked at individual, smaller, multiple buildings, and then the decision was made that, and Bob showed you a couple of them, the decision was made to sort of consolidate the homes or the units into 2 buildings, and then you could keep the balance of the property. Many of you walked it with me out there. I mean, you know, it's been beat up by the animals that were in the pens and stuff, but I mean, that's all going away. All those areas will be revegetated. We've got, and Brian Carey's going to go into our director of environmental services here at Land Tech will elaborate on it a little bit, but all of the wetlands are going to be remediated, restored, enhanced. There'll be buffered planted areas all around all of them. There'll be, obviously, we'll be inside some of those regulated areas, but a lot of the disturbance that Bob spoke about earlier and that I would repeat is a lot of it's temporary disturbance, right? It's the temporary disturbance to actually perform the construction. And then as we work our way out, all those areas will be remediated and restored, probably even to a little better than they were right now. It's, you know, you see what's out there, left out there right now, and that's only from the activity from the animals running around the pens and stuff. Otherwise, the place was impeccably kept when Mr. Bin was here and all the animals were populating the property. So again, I'm happy to go into more detail if you like, but I think you have the gist of what is going on here between Bob's presentation and mine. And I'm gonna, if nobody has any questions, I'll leave it up to you. If people have questions, I'm happy to answer any, obviously, but I'm turn it over to Brian to just briefly run through some of the stuff that we considered when, I guess Bob mentioned it to you. I'm sorry, Bob mentioned it to you, but you know, this project's probably been going on for nearly a year. Looking at different ways that we can lay the property out. We had our landscape architect look at a few layouts. We had Beinfield's office look at a few layouts, and then this is where we ended up, which I think does both things. Something the client's happy with. I hope the commission would be happy with it, and I think it preserves great deal of the property, which otherwise could be, 2-acre, 3-acre parcels on here, with single-family residential activities. With greater disturbance in what's going, or greater activity, not so much greater disturbance, although it would require bigger roads and more site development for each of the individual lots. I guess, Brian, if you want to go over a little bit of what we can
Yep.
see from an environmental perspective, and I can play fan of white for you and scroll this around.
I actually can share the screen.
Want me to just stop?
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Pete.
Yep.
Bob, I'll keep my comments short as well, knowing that there's another hearing for the commission tonight. Basically, we were tasked with coming out and mapping all of the existing wetland resources on the site, which there are many. There's basically 4 separate wetland systems that are supported by ground hydrology, and there's a man-made pond. Cooper's Brook, as you know, runs through the property. And we basically went in and flagged and surveyed all of the wetlands on the property. This is the wetland that is closest to the proposed development, and was found when we were out there. It wasn't represented on any previous maps, either with the town or through the Natural Resource Conservation Service soil mapping. So we did locate this, and as part of our mitigation plan, we will be restoring this area, this wet meadow area. The rest of the wetlands will not be impacted. They will remain basically in a forested state. There's a road here that will remain, and then there's no work being proposed within the limits of this wetland. The existing on-site pond, as Pete and Bob had said previously, this is a man-made pond. It's supported by an existing dam structure that is located on the eastern boundary line. We did flag that. There's some inputs, there's some stream inputs that do feed this pond, and Cooper's Brook runs into the pond, which is fed through surface flow. That being said, we've developed a robust planting plan for the wetland that's directly in front of the building. I'm sorry, there's a lot of sheets on this plan. So we will be basically restoring this area. We'll be putting in large deciduous trees, red maple trees, and then a shrub layer, and then basically putting plugs into the limits of the wetland to reestablish native vegetation in there. Right now, this is mostly just stilt grass, which is an invasive species. So we'll be removing that and replanting this in a more native fashion. The planting plan is, you can go through this, but there's a detailed planting plan that we've put together. And that's basically it. There was no evidence of any state listed species, threatened or endangered species on the site. We did do a request to the Natural Diversity Database, and that was pretty benign. Excuse me. So that being said, I know this hearing's going for another night. I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions from the board at this point? Be good to get them in so that they can be worked on before the next meeting if we have any. Alan?
I have a question for Mr. Romano. Did I hear you say that there would be a support column in the stream, or is this a clear span?
You're muted.
I know.
I thought I was muted.
No column in the middle, no pier in the middle. It's a clear span.
So it's a clear span.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
because I thought you said there'd be a support.
No, I said
There
there
would
would
column.
no
That's the term
reason
I heard you use.
No.
That it? from Alan? Anyone else at this point? Alan, last time you mentioned you were concerned about a wall. Did you want to back to that at this point?
Sure. I guess one of the comments or in the initial presentation, it was stated, if I recall, that the buildings are sited in such a way as to be nestled, I'll say, carefully in the landscape. And observing the site plan for it, I saw that, I guess that's building number 1, which is in the, I guess that's eastern portion of the property. There's a large retaining wall which extends from behind the building, like the midpoint of the building, over to the eastern property line and extending even to the area where the septic system is. And that wall at one point is 25 feet high along the property line. And I thought that was a fairly large height for a wall. Certainly a concern to me, not just because of the height of the wall, but it's only because topographically it's there's obviously a large amount of disturbance that's going to occur, and some of that is within the upland review area as well. I'll just also say, Mr. Jewell, I believe my comment was not that there was I think I quantified or approximately gave a quantification of the disturbance within the upland review area. It wasn't just the upland, and I believe you misquoted me in saying that.
I can respond to the wall question, but I don't differentiate between the upland or upland review area. I use those two words interchangeably.
Well, I don't think that's correct in the context of our regulations, sir.
But again, you said that there were 1.2 acres of the upland review area were being disturbed, and that's what you said. I reviewed the record about why you thought there was a significant activity. You may have had another reason as well, but you stated that reason on the record. And I listened to it, and so I did not misquote you. You're parsing my words too carefully, because I do not differentiate between an upland and upland review area, because I am not an engineer. If you said upland review area and I said upland, those are interchangeable terms in my view. And I invite you to go listen to your own words on the record to confirm them. In addition, since you just questioned something I said at the last meeting about the wall and having a minimal impact on the neighbors, we're talking about the neighbors, the owners of properties that are occupied by residential homeowners, which are on all sides of the property except to the east where that wall faces. And we've spoken to the owners of that 50-acre parcel that does have residential development, but far distance from here, and they have no objection to any part of this development. So we can say that even with that wall, we have developed the site in such a way to have a minimal impact on the neighbors. And I'm very glad I could clarify that comment for you on the record.
May I say just something to Mr. Pilch's point? Pete Romano again, Land Tech. We didn't ignore your comment. We looked at it. I think the next time we come in front of you, we're going to have a little tweak to that building that's going to get it in such a way that we can step that wall in and perhaps do a terraced wall. So it's not 25 feet top to bottom. So we are looking at it, and we're going to try to pull the building in a little bit so we can do some grading over there a little bit more convenient than having just a 25-foot wall there.
Would you be able to show that at the next meeting?
Yes, we'll get it submitted. Things are actually done. We didn't want to submit something new right now for a couple different reasons, but a lot of the comments that got made, and there weren't a lot, but the comments that got made we've addressed, and you'll see them at the next hearing, and we'll submit them in prior to.
That would be terrific. Tim, did you have a question?
I did. If Mr. Romano is able to describe stormwater management with what appears to be Cultex or infiltrators as shown on C 2.1, the drawing that Mr. Carey was just describing with the central wetlands between the two buildings. This is where my larger concern lies with construction impacts of the two buildings and related improvements with the wetlands that in that location down gradient based on slopes.
Sure, hey, Brian, could you had the full-blown set of plans? Can you call it up? This is the PowerPoint for the presentation. You have the full set of plans. It has the storm drainage that Tim's talking about. Can you call that up for me? Thank you. So there's two areas, Tim, Mr. Bishop, that storm drainage infiltrators. There's one right here. Okay, Brian, you can see it. Take it from there. Yeah, there's the infiltrators here that handles the water on this side of this stream. And then if you go to the next page towards Branchville, there's a set of infiltrators there as well. And we're using some of this overland back to the wetlands that are on that other side. Some of that storm drainage is draining towards this wetlands in here. And that's the bulk of how we're handling the storm drainage around the properties and stuff. And like I said, we have a full-blown drainage report that's been submitted. We've addressed the 1, 10, and the 50-year storm. And in all instances, we maintain zero incremental runoff from the site and actually increase the water quality as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Tim. I think your question was also, this is all grading here associated with all these, these contours are all new grades.
So essentially, as you stated, some water will be going into the ground at the location where your arrow is now.
Exactly.
But also with the grading, there's a design that includes migration of surface water overland into the wetland itself.
Yep.
Water course, I should say.
Oh, not so much of the water courses. Well, I guess it eventually reaches there. You're correct. But the idea was this whole area that is surrounded by the roadway. This is soft drainage all along here and drains into this big large area that's encapsulated or surrounded by the roadway. And it's all, this is, as Brian alluded to before, this is all revegetated all throughout this area from the curbs all the way in. And you can see there's no curbs on the inside of the roadway there.
This existing wetland right now is degraded. Basically, it doesn't have any tree canopy. I don't know when it was removed, but you can see some of the pens were previously constructed adjacent to this. It's basically a seep. It's a bit of there's a steep coming into this, which is creating the sustaining hydrology for this wetland. So again, the idea is really to replant this heavily with shrubs and plugs and provide a tree canopy again to reforest the area.
But the design does include additional water to that area of over the surface.
So any of the water from the parking lots is collected into the Coltech system. The only water that would be directed into this area would be surface water, which is inherently would be clean and free of sediments and TSS.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Carson?
Thank you, Susan. For the record, Carson Finch. I'm probably end up submitting on the record anyway. Just to mention, I'm a civil engineer, EIT, state of Connecticut. It's not what I practice now, but I was trained in that. I just have a couple questions. The first, or one question, one statement. First question is with respect to the existing crossing that has been, I think, coined kind of inadequate for the proposed activity. What is the proposed fate of the existing crossing and kind of mini cul-de-sac, I'll call it, that was down by the original pond with this project?
The intention is to keep that intact. Keep the bridge, keep that little cul-de-sac area, that's all gonna stay intact.
Okay, thank you. I think so that would be one of my concerns, and it goes to the comment that I'll make as well. So I was not here on the July 11th meeting. I did review the video, and so I was not participating in the vote to make this, a public hearing. But I think in line with the comments this evening about discussing whether that was, supported or why that decision was made, I would say that, from my perspective, while the bridge is not activity within the wetlands with, like a excavator rolling through the wetlands, when you're covering the wetlands, that is also an activity within the wetlands, and with my understanding. So, a 75-foot clear span bridge is not a normal kind of residential, walking bridge. It probably, I would assume, costs more than my house to put in. So it's a significant activity. I understand there's no ground disturbance within the wetlands itself. It's outside of it, and I appreciate that effort. But the activity is still a significant activity that's covering a large portion of not only wetlands, but an actual flowing water course. So I think that, to me, rises to the level of substantial activity that would require public input. So that's my statement on that. But I think it also ties into the fact that there's already a portion of the stream that is not daylighted with the existing crossing. And so, I mean, at some point there has to be a limit, right? How many crossings does somebody get to have? This isn't the Thames. There shouldn't be like 9 bridges across it. We're only talking about 2, but would one be, sufficient is my question. And so I would ask you to consider, what you're doing with respect to the other one. If you got this one, the larger one allowed, maybe you could daylight the stream down below and get rid of some of that impermeable material right next to the water course. That would be my suggestion and my comments on that.
I would just say, and I don't know whether it's appropriate, we certainly go take a walk out there. That bridge is not that wide. Certainly it's not 2 lanes. It's probably about 15 or 18 feet wide. And, you obviously, I wouldn't mislead you and say you couldn't take it out, but it is, even though it's not wide and it has poor geometry to get a vehicle around it, it is fairly substantial. I mean, it would take huge tasks to get that out of there. And I think if you walk it, and we all walked it, I'm not putting words in anyone else's mouth, but it's a nice path. You go all the way around the site and you end up crossing this very nice stone bridge in between the 2 ponds. So, I mean, it's not an engineering answer, but from an aesthetic perspective, it's a pretty nice bridge in an area that's all revegetated and looks great over it. That's the only thing I would say about that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think you're proposing, a timber bridge is better than the other options that are available as well. So I appreciate that effort. And I tend to prefer, I mean, however old that bridge is, it's not new. It's been there a long time.
No, it looks good. It's a beautiful stone bridge.
Oh, it is. Yeah, they don't make them like that anymore. So, I mean, it's a beautiful bridge. But I think for me, it's a question of how much of the water course is not daylighted, for wildlife concerns.
I don't disagree. It seems like we don't want to take on that task, but anyway, the point taken.
Thank you.
Sue, you're on mute.
Sorry. Mr. Pather, did you have your hand up before?
I didn't, because
Oh, you didn't. Okay.
I did just to
Oh,
get,
you did. Okay, please.
just to get elevated. That's all. But I'm
I
ready when
think
you
we're
are.
actually ready for you, Seelan.
Okay.
Okay, great.
I don't want to put any words, Ms. Baker, but yeah, Seelan was next in line from our end.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Seelan Potter. I'm principal at Branchville Architecture. Just going to share. Do you see that?
Yes.
So I understand that architecture is not part of your purview, but we wanted to quickly share your vision for the building. Our firm is based in South Norwalk, and we have executed many multifamily projects in Connecticut, with some of that work extending to New York and Massachusetts. I can honestly say that with all the work we've done, this is one of the most beautiful pieces of properties we've had the privilege of designing to. When we walked the site for the first time, this concept formed in our minds. A pair of buildings built into the natural topography of the site with the architecture that felt that was placed into the site rather than top of it. It was also clear to us that the site had to be the focus, with its walking paths, its streams, with cascading water and ponds at the end. You've seen it, it's beautiful. So with that in mind, we put the beginnings of those thoughts on paper with materials here before you. So let me show what we have. This will be short. So to be clear, firstly, these are envisaged as luxury dwelling units. So Mr. Ben has given us some carte blanche for design and said, do something creative and do something special. And these are early renderings. And when we get to planning and zoning, you're going to see much more detailed drawings. But the idea here is for these two buildings to be nestled into the site. You can see here, this is almost like a luxury walkout basement. So that's the look we're going for. You'd park in this portion of the building. You'd drive in here and drive out here. But the residential only starts above. There's just a lobby that extends to the bottom. Above, you have the two residential levels. And above that, you have a flat roof that we see as an amenity for the residents. The materials important. We felt that you need materials that go with the site. So natural stone at the base, wood cladding potentially, and that's being worked out right now. And then just a lot of glass, because the site is the star of the show, and we want people to enjoy that view and people to rent here, not rent here, to buy here because of that. To be clear, these are condos. These are the plans. So this is that lower level with that stone front. Here you see the parking spaces below. There's at least one for every residential unit. Small amenity space, maybe a gym for the residents, and then a lobby space with mail package, stuff like that, of go residential uses. And there will be an elevator in the building. So you see how it's nestled in, right? This intended to show that there's ground around it. And then when you get to the second level, the second floor can walk out to the back of the site because of the topography. So all of these units will have terraces. And it's a simple mix of ones and twos with different sizes because we want to create different product. So people have a more choice of the residential product. And this is the third floor. And this is the green roof. A massive green roof. And then the idea is you put a roof deck up here. You can imagine sitting up there at sunset, enjoying a cocktail above your home, grill area, relaxing areas, and gardening. So everything that we're doing is contributing to the idea that you're living in the woods. And this is a section that indicates the design concept. Take a building, push it into the earth, and then cover with green so the sight lines from above looks like you're looking over extended green for all intents and purposes. And hopefully it blends in. But here you see the parking level and the two dwelling residential levels. And then I'll stop there on the actual diagrams. We thought it was most appropriate for this building to have extensively considered green building strategies. It goes with the whole story that we're trying to tell, that it's a building that belongs in nature, and because of that, we think that we should explore things like extensive insulation beyond what the code allows. Being built into the earth helps that. The green roof, that helps with taking the burden of the water that goes to the actual system into the retention. We're steering all electric with heat pumps for power. We'll explore solar arrays I say explore because it's an extremely wooded area, so we'll see if it's viable or not. And then we'll have EV chargers stations as required by code in Connecticut right now. And energy recovery units for the HVAC. So some of that is code with the new code, but we intend to go beyond that. Again, partly because it's the right thing to do and partly because the story we want to tell. That gives some insight into our product, and we look forward to detailing this design for planning and zoning. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're at, I think, the time we had hoped to continue.
That's perfect timing then, because we're done.
Yeah, that's what we were hoping you would be in time for us to have heard everything so that we have a sense of what will come up at next meeting. We would like to basically see the wall stepped. I guess you're not really considering removing the crossing, the cul-de-sac.
We'll certainly look at that crossing. I think our position is that it would probably be more harmful to remove that significant crossing than to leave it in place. But we'll look at that and the impact of the second crossing as well. So at least you guys can balance those based on data.
Appreciate that. Okay, and then we will hear from the public. And of course, when we do hear from the public, it will have to be on issues relating to wetlands. Oh, I'm sorry, I had one other question, which was that are there any offsite wetlands within 100 feet of anything you're doing?
I don't believe so. I think we've surveyed, we'll double check that, but I think our surveyor showed all of the uplands and wetlands that were required to on the survey, but we'll double check that to make sure nothing was left off.
Thank you. That'd be great.
And
Tim?
so our
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Tim, did you have something else?
I did, thank you. I'm just trying to go through this through the site plan packets. Was there ever an inventory of existing trees and those that would be scheduled for removal as part of this project?
I don't know the answer to that question, but we could go through. I think we did have the number at the site walk, but we could nail that down a little bit better. I think the as we saw on the site walk, I think a lot of the trees that were coming down in the disturbed area were beeches, and they were either already sick and dying or already dead, but we can come up with a firm number for that.
Okay, thank you. And for the record, I was not at the site walk, which will
sorry about that.
in the minutes. Also, certified environmental professional, certified ecologist, and wetlands professional.
We all got very wet on that sidewalk.
Just that we do have, one of the gentlemen on the walk asked me, we identified all, Pete Romano again, we identified all the trees. And after the site walk, I forgot exactly what it was. One of the gentlemen asked me, you know how many trees came down or coming down, and I didn't know at the site walk, but subsequently we did. I will get you the number, but we did identify all the trees, both diameter and species.
Thank you.
Okay, so you'll supply that information.
Yeah, the quantity coming down.
Okay.
And continuation date, did we have a date in mind?
Yes, we had September the 12th.
Okay.
I just wanted to bring it out at the last meeting on July 11th. You did mention 47 trees will come down.
Very good. I think that's about right.
That was my note.
But Tim, you wanted to know what the location was as well? Is that what you're asking for?
Yeah, specifically, just on the site plan that as it relates to wetlands, as we've seen in previous applications, the effects on wetlands and water courses due to loss of canopy for various reasons.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds like they
know
can
that,
provide that to us. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Anyone else, or should we call it continued to the September 12th meeting? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank
you. Okay, I'm going to suggest a very quick break while we get the next group up. I came back with a cold, so I'm why I keep going in and out of view here. So, okay. Anyone else needs to step back? Now would be the time. Artie, are you able to start promoting the next
Sure,
group?
I could.
Yep. And putting a couple other people back.
I guess Pete Romano is still going to be for this application. Brian Carey will be there too.
Oh, okay.
And
So
I
we're-
promoted Jason, so unless someone else from their team, we can promote them.
Okay. Sounds like we're ready then.
I think Andy Sumalides, if he's in as well.
Sure, we'll promote him.
Thank you.
Okay,
Can we also
So-
add Anthony Zemba, please?
I'm sorry?
Can we also add Anthony Zemba? He's a Land Tech employee as well.
So this is the second public hearing of the evening, IW 24-19, 27 Abbott Avenue. Plenary ruling application for the construction of 10 residential townhouses with associated drainage and landscaping within the upland review area of wetlands and watercourses. Owner Vitan Alimi, applicant Brian Carey. And Caleb will read in.
Yes, so we
please,
have
the documents.
We have the site plan, proof of notice by applicant to water company, proof of notice by applicant to the Commissioner of Public Health, wetlands and watercourse delineation, soil report by a soil scientist, drainage report, engineering reports and analyses, and additional drawings to fully describe the proposed project, any filling, excavation, drainage, or hydraulic modifications to watercourses, description of the ecological communities and functions of the wetlands or watercourses, and the effects of the proposed regulated activities on these communities and wetland functions. Description of how the applicant will change, diminish, or enhance the ecological communities and functions of the wetlands or watercourses involved in the application and each of the alternatives, and a description of why each alternative considered was deemed neither feasible or not prudent. Analysis of materials to be deposited within the affected property. Measures which mitigate the impact of the proposed activity. A biological evaluation of any marsh, swamp, or bog or other wetland within the affected property. Proof that notices of public hearing were mailed to all property owners within 100 feet of the subject property no less than 10 days prior to the hearing. Written narrative of proposed activity, location map, plenary existing condition site plan, plenary complete set of proposed site plans, plenary erosion and sedimentation control plan, plenary biological narrative of existing conditions and impacts, invasive species control plan dated June 10th, 2024, property deed, OM report dated June 17th, 2024, public hearing instructions, 27 Abbott Avenue, a butter email from town staff, public correspondence, 10-unit plans dated July 11th, 2024, letters to abutters, letter to Inland Wetland Board staff reopening a public hearing, legal notice dated July 11th and 18th, 2024, public correspondence, IWB memorandum dated July 24th, 2024, public hearing instructions, 27 Abbott Avenue, abutters email from town staff dated August 7th, 2024, legal notice dated August 8th, 2024, engineer peer review report dated August 7th, 2024, Steve Trinkus, 27 Abbott Avenue, review dated August 16th, 2024. Steve Trinkus resume. Legal notice dated August 15th, 2024. Land Tech response to RTEL Engineering dated August 16th, 2024. Drainage report dated June 13th, 2024. Revised August 15th, 2024. Site plan dated June 13th, 2024. Revised August 15th, 2024. Public correspondence dated August 20th, 2024. SLR biological evaluation peer review report dated August 21st, 2024. Public correspondence dated August 21st, 2024. Petition to intervene, 27 Abbott Avenue, dated August 21st, 2024. Public correspondence dated August 19th, 2024. Visual renderings, 27 Abbott Avenue, and public correspondence dated August 22nd, 2024.
Susan, you're muted.
All right, yes, we also need once again to vote on whether the intervener should be granted intervener status. We received a letter, I believe, yesterday, which, similar to the previous application, requests that it's from Mr. David Sachs, requests intervener status. I don't know if you all saw that, because it came in rather late, but basically, at this point, we have to basically decide if the alleged unreasonable pollution, impairment, or destruction of the public trust in air, water, or other natural resources relates to something within the jurisdiction of the board to consider in conjunction with the application. And B, if there are specific facts alleged in the petition to intervene that reasonably connect the proposed conduct by the applicant to the alleged unreasonable pollution, impairment, or destruction. So, in other words, proposed intervener cannot just make a bald assertion of likely unreasonable pollution, impairment, or destruction without a factual nexus set forth in the verified petition. So we did receive a verified petition. So it is up to us to vote to acknowledge and grant intervention status. So, Tim?
I think the petition by the intervener is valid and thorough, and I would make the motion to grant them intervener status.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Excuse me, I hate to intervene.
Mr. Klein?
Yeah, Madam Chair, for the record, Jay Klein, not a member of the board who could vote on anything before you, representative for 27 Abbott Avenue. As you referenced, this petition was filed, and it looks like my camera's not working. I'm sorry, you're not missing anything by not seeing me. But as you mentioned earlier, this petition was filed, I think, a couple of hours ago. I know it's typically this board's policy that any new information, in order for that information to be acted upon, has to be provided the Thursday prior to any meeting. I'm guessing that this hearing will be continued. What I'd ask in light of those facts, that we be provided with the opportunity to present evidence that the intervener has not met their evidentiary burden in the petition that was filed a couple of hours ago. Thank you.
Mr. Klein, I'm not sure that that's something that certainly makes sense to me, because a person may become an intervener even if the allegations ultimately are determined by the board to be without merit. So it seems to me it's up to us to determine whether or not the intervener has merit.
Yes, one of those, one of the standards, as you mentioned, is there a factual basis proven? We believe that they have not shown any evidentiary backing for the allegations in their pleading, which is why we'd ask for the opportunity, really just a typical due process, right, to respond to the allegations there, rather than having you all make a vote on that before we're provided with that opportunity. I don't think the interveners are losing any rights. If this hearing was closing this evening, which again, it's my assumption that it is not closing. And in light of the fact, I know just from our past experience, when materials are provided to you all later than the Thursday before the meeting, that's been frowned upon. I don't know that, or not, I don't know. I know that an exception is not necessary in this instance. I think everyone should be given play by the same rules and the same opportunity.
Anyone on the board, Carson?
Thanks, Susan. Yeah, I was gonna, just as Mr. Klein was speaking, I had my hand raised as well. So I don't know whether there's any, I agree, I don't think there's any actual prohibition against us acting tonight. Personally, I have not had a chance to review the materials. So if we took a vote tonight, I would have to abstain on that. But one of the questions related to that I was gonna ask is, I can't recall how we did it the first time. Are we just doing it on the papers, or will the intervener have a chance to present and then the other side have a chance to counter and then we make a decision? Or procedurally, I don't know how you guys want to proceed, but I have not had a chance to review the papers, so I could not make an informed decision tonight myself personally.
Okay, appreciate that. Basically, what the intervenor status allows for the intervenor to do is make a presentation, yes. And they did so last time. They had hired their own peer reviewers. And those people were allowed to present to us. And other than that, it's a public hearing, so anyone from the public can speak. Anyone want to comment on putting off a vote for a week so that we can study the intervenor? Some of us can study the intervenor document. Tim, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. If the other board members haven't reviewed it, then obviously that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think putting it off for a week is not
Well,
for a
yeah,
session
actually,
is
it would be 3 weeks because
3
we
weeks.
are our next meeting is on September the 12th.
I think it's only fair to both sides that all the information is presented.
Okay. Anyone else? So Tim, do you want to withdraw your motion for the time being?
Yeah, I'll withdraw it, given the fact that the board members have not had the opportunity to review. I did, so therefore I made the motion that there was basis in their claims that was provided. So that being said, I will withdraw until we have that opportunity.
Okay, so this will definitely come up first again next time. And we will proceed from here.
This is Kirk Carr, on the record. Thank you for watching.